Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, everyone, or good day, wherever you are. This is Lois Pace from the Global Health Council, inviting everyone who's joined us to the Global Financing Facilities Spring Webinar Series. And for those of you who haven't been a part of these or haven't been a part of these most recently, just to explain this part of the series, we often bring together civil society and those who are interested in the work of the GFF, who sit sort of outside those walls, in advance of the investors group meeting, which is happening shortly, and we'll hear more about that from today's presenters. But importantly, I wanted to let people know that our other calls have been a lot around information sharing and taking questions from attendees, but this webinar in particular is intended to, again, transfer information, but also invite feedback from all of you who liaise with the GFF in your countries, and encourage you to provide not just questions, but also comments for our CSO representatives who attend that meeting. So we will repeat this throughout the webinar, but we definitely encourage you to offer not just your questions, but your comments so that your voices can truly be heard as part of those discussions. Today, you'll see the agenda up on your screen. We have a number of speakers. We're still waiting for at least one to join, but we have a number of speakers from whom you've heard in previous webinars who will be talking again about the upcoming investors group meeting and their agenda, some highlights on youth and adolescent engagement as part of those discussions, some additional information around GFF and UHC, and finally, again, opportunities to hear updates and to hear from you. So with that, I will go ahead and do my usual spiel around logistics and how chats, how to submit questions or comments. Again, if you look to the right of your screen, you'll see a section labeled questions, and that's where we ask you to please type in your name, your organization, and your question, or again, your comment for the presenters, and we will be sure that those are answered either as part of the webinar or in follow-up if you submit those while people are speaking or just after we've ended the remarks. So first off, I'd like to kick off to our first speaker of the day. That is Angela from JPIGO, who again is one of our CSO representatives to the investors group, and she'll be providing an overview of that upcoming meeting. Angela?
Thank you, Lois. Again, welcome all to this free GFF 7th Investors Group meeting, in addition to many other spring meetings that Lois has briefed us about. Traditionally, this particular webinar is held to share the investors group agenda ahead of the meeting so that we can gather all the CSO community feedback to the extent that we can, and write on time before the IG meeting so that we can be able to represent your voices and ensure your big takeaways from the way you have been engaged in the field, areas where you think we've done very well, and together with our governments, and areas where as civil society we feel we can do better. That feedback is so critical because that is why we, Amino, myself, Chris, and Patson are your representatives, and we would like not to share our voices, but rather your felt needs as well as your voices, regardless. As broad, as narrow, as specific as possible. We should be able to synthesize that after this call. And so, as Lois has said, unlike the other calls where we share a lot of information, this particular call is very unique, and we want to request that you try as much as possible and share your reflections as well as questions, but more your comments and feedback that then can shape how this representation and your voices then are shaped, especially at the GFF IG meeting. New countries, I want to make a passionate call, especially to the new countries, because some of the countries, started way ahead of you, and you are likely to be facing some unique challenges that are new to already information that has been shared with you. And those countries are of very great importance during this call to share with us how well you think you feel or you're experiencing especially meaningful engagement, so that we can be able to learn from you and also quickly fix whatever needs to be fixed through our dialogue with the leadership that we'll be meeting with on the 23rd. And a similar, what I wanted to add to what Lois said is that a similar post-investors group or spring meetings webinar will be held so that we circle back and ensure that the feedback loop from this particular webinar is sealed, where we will also be sharing your key takeaways and perhaps answers to the questions or feedback and comments from your experiences on the things that you're going to share with us. Up to there, I would like to invite Aminu to kick us off, and back to Lois for introduction of Aminu.
Thank you, Angela. And yes, we can go ahead and transition to Aminu, another of our CSO representatives.
Hello. Can you hear me well?
Go ahead, Aminu. Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Angela, for this elaborate introduction of the pre-IG webinar. As Angela rightly mentioned, we are going into the 7th GFF Investors Group meeting, which will be held on the 23rd of April, 2018, on the margins of the World Bank IMF spring meetings. And it is happening a week after the main World Bank spring meeting. And just to let you know that these are biannual meetings. The last one took place in November last year in Maputo, and it was preceded by a 2-day CSO consultation meeting. But in this one, we don't have that consultation, and that's why we are having this webinar to engage and inform our distinguished CSO community. And just to also inform that with respect to the meeting is going to focus on update on country progress and portfolio overview, with a special focus on Tanzania, as well as highlights on the 10 new countries with overview of portfolio. Countries will be invited in that meeting to share experience, opportunities, and challenges. As you're aware, in the IG, there are a lot of country membership, so they'll be invited to also talk about how they are doing with respect to GFF. There's also going to be a focus on nutrition, the roles and the fundamental to delivering on the GFF mission. I know many of you have been talking about nutrition, and for it to be on the agenda, we're happy that nutrition is going to feature this time around. Then there's also going to be an overview on the adolescent and the youth addendum to the civil society engagement strategy. We are able to inform the Secretariat, and they agree to give us 15 minutes to talk about the youth addendum as part of the engagement strategy. And Paston will be able to do that discussion at a later time in this seminar. Then there's also going to be a discussion about the replenishment process for the GFF Trust Fund. As you are all aware that there's a lot of ongoing effort to replenish the GFF to raise more money. So we'll be having an update during the IG meeting on replenishment, where we are, how much money do we raise, and some of the conversation on the next step. There's also going to be a focus on GFF private sector engagement, and also discussion on the financial protection in health, and also what the GFF approach is going to be in that area. So these are the general overview of the IG meeting. I would like to now mention what is our priority during the IG meeting. Myself, Angela, Chris, and Paston will be representing you in this meeting. What is going to be our main focus? We'll be busy to ensure that the voices of the CSOs are heard very well in the IG meeting. There's not going to be any specific CSO engagement update apart from the addendum, but we'll definitely create time to ensure that information flow from the IG to the CSOs. We'll also be looking at the issue of ensuring the role of CSOs in the replenishment agenda, so it comes out clearly in the work that we are doing. We hope to engage Secretariat to know how will the CSO at country level, at regional and global level, be engaged in the replenishment. We're also going to ensure emphasis and added value of strengthening partnership between private sector and the CSOs at country level, and with respect to implementation of the investment cases. Many countries already have investment cases. So a lot of them are already online at the GFF website, and we encourage you to download and read your country investment case. So we hope to have discussion during the IG on how CSO will strengthen partnership with the private sector to monitor and also to support implementation of the investment case. We're also going to encourage the IG members and Secretariat to promote CSOs and government partnership in the new 10 countries, especially strengthening the existing country multi-stakeholder platform, or where they are not in existence, for CSO to contribute and support government to establish new country platform. As you are aware, this country platform, they're supposed to be all inclusive. They're supposed to promote accountability, transparency, and participation, and ensure that every partner is at the table, including young people, media, and the CSO. We're also going to use the same meeting to share ideas and information regarding the addendum of the CSO engagement plan, not just sharing information, but also mobilizing support from the IG to support this initiative of the addendum for the young people. We're excited about this initiative, and we are committed to continue to represent you during the IG meeting, and we'll be coming back to you in May to give another webinar post IG to share ideas what is going on. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much, Aminu. And it's very good to hear sort of a general overview of the upcoming agenda and what our priorities will be as a civil society community, or yours as our representatives. You did mention the Adolescent and Youth Engagement Addendum as part of the CSO strategy, and we do have with us Patson, who's joined us, who's our youth representative to the investors group. So Patson, we will pass the floor to you to speak more about that particular aspect of our engagement strategy and the IG agenda. And Patson, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself, we are ready for you now. Thank you.
All right, am I audible?
Yes, you are, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much once again for having given me the space to present here. As introduced, my name is Patson Malisa. I'm currently serving as part of the investor, or as the youth representative to the investor group. Basically, what I'll be doing for the investor group meeting is to present the youth addendum, which basically was part of an ongoing discussion as to how we can have young people both as a, not only just as a stakeholder in terms of beneficiaries, but also as active participants in the implementation of the GFF. And therefore for us, the main key components in terms of documentation was the Global Strategy for Women, Children and Adolescents Health for 2016 to 2030, as well as the civil society engagement strategy, which has already been presented to the IG and that was as part of an ongoing discussion, again, from the civil society stakeholders. So for us, the key components of the addendum was basically, first of all, the global representation, which basically speaks as to the outline of youth being part of the civil society coordinating group, of which is basically all of us who are part of the civil society constituency of the GFF, and then on top of that, having the 2 representatives for youth in the steering committee of the civil society coordinating group, and those 2 representations are Joni Bewa, Dr. Joni Bewa, and myself. And then we also have, as part of the civil society seats within the IG, at the moment we have 1 seat there with a youth representative, and that's myself. And the second component of the addendum is the knowledge sharing and capacity building, which basically shows exactly how we intend to engage one another in terms of capacity building, as well as knowledge sharing. And then the first part of it would be the participation in knowledge sharing webinars, periodic mentoring, as well as a bi-monthly newsletter, which is hosted by the civil society coordinating group, as well as partners. Second one being the opportunities for youth, for the IG youth, the youth rep within the IG, and other young people representing youth organizations to be provided or to be given a part for engagement through these particular platforms, which have been highlighted in the addendum, as well as an additional opportunity for engagement through a youth-focused blog on the GFF, as well as alignment with other youth networks, including PMNCH's adolescent and youth constituency, along with an integration of this addendum and learnings from youth-led advocacy efforts into advocating for change for adolescents advocacy toolkit. And then the next component of this particular addendum would be the integrating of youth in national CSO action plans and coalitions. This is going to be part of the steering committee's mandate, which is to ensure that indeed there is guidance on how CSOs bring together a strong youth representation within their networks, is particularly with providing explicit recommendations with regards to inclusion of youth networks and coalition activities, as well as leadership groups, as well with a proportion of the grants from the small grants program supported by the PMNCH and the GFF to be given towards the particular activities that involve young people, particularly within the adolescents and youths constituency within the GFF platform. Then the next component of this would be the inclusion of youth in multi-stakeholder country platforms. This would be particularly, again, the steering committee engaging GFF stakeholders to ensure that the implementation of the guidance note, which is titled Inclusive Multi-Stakeholders Country Platforms in Support of Every Woman and Every Child, is emphasized, or should we say that we have the emphasis of the minimum standard around the inclusion of youth in that particular note implemented within all GFF projects, as well as having members of civil society and affected population constituencies, particularly in youth, to be selected for membership of multi-stakeholder country platforms in a transparent manner by their own self-identified constituencies. And more than one representative from a constituency should be able to participate within the platform wherever possible. Now, in terms of accountability, an accountability working group of the civil society coordinating group should include youth representatives with a view to identify youth-led organizations to develop and implement, as well as participate in accountability activities, particularly at country levels. And the issues which should be addressed in this particular component would be the explicit inclusion of youth issues and investment cases, concrete opportunities for periodic consultations with youth constituencies on monitoring and evaluation, as well as access to GFF formal evaluation reports for feedback from youth-led organizations. And then in terms of documenting the youth engagement around the GFF processes to date, we are proposing that an analysis takes place through a sort of a study to enable better decision-making on how best to support and enhance youth engagement moving forward, to ensure that maximum contributions of young people can be leveraged to support the goals of countries within the GFF and global strategies. So in terms of that, we are recommending an analysis of youth engagement and planning, implementation, advocacy, and accountability across a selection of GFF countries for this to be completed. And as part of the addendum as well, we've made sure that the contact of all the youth reps, along with our partner, the PMNCH contact, is there as well for you to engage with us whenever you need us and whenever you have any inquiries with regards to this addendum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patson. And I know we had another slide just to show your contact information should people want additional information from you or Joni as our representatives. But thanks very much for that overview. I'm going to now turn it over to Susanna Hurd, who's going to also share a bit of around an event that I know is happening on the margins of the IG meeting during World Bank Week around GFF and UHC. And Susanna will also be offering additional updates from the Civil Society Coordinating Group before we open it up for questions and comments from attendees. So Susanna, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks so much, Lois. And hi, everybody. I wanted to provide some information about an upcoming session that will be happening during the World Bank Civil Society Policy Forum, which is a key component of the World Bank Spring Meetings in Washington, D.C. So on April 19th from 2 to 3:30, there will be a session called Maximizing Civil Society's Role in Improving Equity and Access to Health Services, Global Financing Facility Country Experiences. So this is for those of you who will be in Washington at the time. We hope that you will attend. In order to attend, you have to be already registered for the Civil Society Policy Forum. And I think many of you who will be in DC are likely registered for that already. It will be moderated by our own Angela Matunga, who is, as you know, one of the Civil Society representatives to the GFF Investors Group. Aminu, our other CSO rep, has been a key partner in shaping the agenda for the session and will also be there. We have panelists from Senegal, Musa Min, from Kenya, John Paul Omoyo, from DRC, Guy Bokongo, and from Save the Children, Gwen Hines, who will be providing sort of a multi-country perspective. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Civil Society Policy Forum runs from April 17th to 20th. It's an opportunity for dialogue between CSOs, government, World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. It's sessions that are primarily organized by civil society organizations. And therefore, with leadership from PATH, we're very thankful to PATH for taking the lead as a member of the Civil Society Coordinating Group to organize the session focused on why investing in the health of women, children, and adolescents is central to achieving and advancing universal health coverage. Panelists from the Civil Society Coordinating Group will discuss their country experiences and approaches in ensuring that vulnerable populations are prioritized and engaged in national health programs and financing plans. And we hope that the presentation and the discussion will highlight how countries are leveraging the GFF to advance UHC priorities and civil society's critical role in facilitating this approach. We also hope that the session generates some feedback as another opportunity to hear from civil society to provide feedback for Angela and Aminu to share perspectives and insights from civil society at the investors group meeting, which will be the following week. My email address is there, as well as Bonnie Keith from PATH, who's been instrumental in organizing the session. So if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out. I will just keep going, Lois, if that's okay, since the next sort of section is mine as well.
Sounds good, Susanna. Thank you.
Okay, good. So just wanted to share a few updates from the Civil Society Coordinating Group. Just quickly, for those of you, I should have said this at the beginning, but for those of you who don't know me, I have stepped in an interim capacity to support and manage the Civil Society Coordinating Group, which is hosted by PMNCH, while Kadi Toure is on secondment with the Director General of WHO. And so I will be temporarily in this role, and you know, my email address is available, and I'm, you know, quite available for comments, questions, or whatever needs you have. The biggest thing I want to make sure people are aware of is our Google group. In the past, we've used email as our primary mode of communication, and we've now created a Google group to kind of streamline and enhance that communication and make sure people who really want to be receiving messages and updates can opt in or opt out as they choose. It's a platform for sharing updates, lessons, resources, and tools among CSOs engaged in the GFF. We will be providing at minimum quarterly sort of in-depth updates, as well as announcements that come up in between. And we recently shared a communications calendar through that Google group for 2018. We'll update that kind of periodically throughout the year as new things come up. So if you haven't yet joined the Google group, I do encourage you to do so, because we will not be using that sort of email group that we used before. We'll be transitioning to the Google group. You can select, once you've joined, you can select to receive a daily summary of emails, or to just view updates in the Google group itself. It's kind of up to you how you want to receive your information. So you can email me directly to join the Google group, and I will get you added to it. Many of you are already part of the Africa Health Budget Network and get their newsletter, but if you are not, I encourage you to go onto their website and join. You can get their newsletter, which is bi-monthly, focused on the GFF. This is another really great resource for regular updates about GFF developments. And lastly, we have been and are continuing to map and record and keep track of CSO activities, roles, progress, challenges, and needs in GFF countries. This is really how we maintain an up-to-date picture of how CSOs are engaging in the GFF at country level, and we really need and want your input in that. This refers to not only the sort of roles that CSOs are playing in the investment case development process, but also in the countries that are a little bit more advanced. We want to know how CSOs are supporting implementation or involved in monitoring and accountability for investment cases, technical assistance, community mobilization. And we really want your feedback on what the kind of progress and as well as any challenges have been. And this really helps us to be able to share the incredible work and the value of civil society organizations in contributing to the GFF with broader GFF stakeholders and donors. It also helps us to identify where capacity strengthening, resource or technical assistance are needed, and to advocate for that at the global level. The GFF Secretariat has also asked us for this information, for this kind of regularly updated mapping, so that they can better liaise and support their country focal points and country platform liaisons to facilitate greater and more meaningful engagement of civil society. So we really, again, need to hear from you and want your feedback, both through these webinar platforms. You can also email me directly or your CSO reps to the investors group directly, or contact us so that we can hear your feedback and make sure to keep a good record and track what's happening at country level, to be able to share that with key stakeholders and donors. And then lastly, just wanted to again flag the post-IG, post-investors group webinar, which we have scheduled tentatively for May 8th. So just to let you know, to save the date for that, and there will be a more formal announcement going out via the Google group and through PMNCH's CSO and adolescent and youth constituencies. But for now, save the date for May 8th. And with that, I will turn it back over to Lois.
Thank you, Susanna. I appreciate that. So it turns out we don't have any questions or comments yet. So we just want to remind our attendees that they are more than welcome to try and submit those in the chat box to the right of your screen. We heard a lot today. We heard stuff from both Angela and Aminu about the upcoming investors group meeting and the overall agenda for that, and sort of our priorities again as a civil society constituency. We heard specifically from Patson about the youth and adolescent engagement strategy and how that's evolved. Really great detail around some of their goals with that agenda. And then finally, again, Susanna made a plea around how you can be involved in the coordinating group and also offer feedback around how that group functions, but then specifically what you're doing so that we can sort of design our engagement accordingly and really best understand, as she said, the needs of civil society on the ground as they liaise with the GFF and trying to help advance those objectives. So with that, I want to sort of pause for a couple of minutes just to give you time to submit questions, or again, any comments on what you would like conveyed as our representatives attend the investors group meeting in a couple of weeks. Remember, this is all about your voice and making that heard.
And Lois, if I could just also add to that, if people have particular feedback for what other things you might like to hear on webinars, if hearing kind of country experiences, for example, highlights from GFF countries and civil society organizations work in those countries, if hearing those via these webinars would be helpful, please do let us know other ideas for information sharing and support. We welcome that.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. It looks like we did have a couple of questions come through, and I'm just going to read it verbatim, and then we'll decide from there sort of who's best to answer it. But there's one question from Sarah, who's with the One Campaign in Nigeria, and she said that they're following the GFF pilot on basic health care that is ongoing in 3 states, and wants to know, how is GFF assessing how its funds are being deployed on current projects, such as this pilot? And that question again is from Sarah Maka from One Campaign in Nigeria. Who'd like to take that on?
That Gates Foundation country director was also in that meeting. He mentioned that they are also contributing $2 million to the investment case basket fund. It means that we have $22 million for Nigeria, and this money will be deployed to 3 states in the country: Niger, Osun, and Abia. What it means, to answer her question, is that the NGO should be aware that we now have $22 million for GFF. We have approved investment case, and also the state are known, and very soon the money will be deployed. So we should put an eye, and we should also show interest. The NGOs in Abuja, they should organize themselves and have a courtesy call with the minister or the MPSCDA or the insurance scheme to ensure that there's a seat at the table for the country's CSO on the National Steering Committee, and how information will be deployed from the steering committee to NGOs and to the community. I'm happy to continue this conversation offline with any interested CSOs to provide more information to them on how they can track this $22 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Aminu. I think that's helpful. Oh, go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, look, Aminu, can you briefly help Sarah also appreciate the status of the accountability scorecard as one of the ways that we are using to foster accountability?
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Angela. So just to inform Sarah and her team and everybody in Nigeria, we the IG reps and the coordinating group, we are willing to support countries to develop country-specific scorecard to track investment case, to track the financial flow, and also to ensure transparency and accountability. Last year, we have one in the country that we tried through the AHBN to do a baseline scoring, and we're happy that by January to June, in July, we should have another one in Nigeria, and we should hope to work with you and everybody to do the scoring and also ensure that the government is informed and there's a feedback mechanism between the country platforms and what the CSO are doing in the country. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much to both Aminu and Angela, who took the words out of my mouth as well around the accountability scorecard. We have, and thank you to Sarah for your question on that. As Aminu said, we would be able to follow up on or offline regarding that question, which could be applied to other things as well. We have another question from Jillian. Jillian's with IYAPF and or IYFP, excuse me, and was wondering if there were examples of GFF funding youth-led or youth-run organizations. If so, I think we'd love to hear about those, and if not, she'd like to know whether or not there's an interest in doing so. So I don't know if Patson wants to take this question, or if there's someone else who can respond to Jillian around GFF funding youth-led organizations. Patson, if you're responding, you are muted.
Hello, I'd lost my connection for a little bit there. Could you please repeat the question?
Apologies for that, Patson. There was a question from Jillian from IYAFP, and she was wondering whether or not there were examples of GFF funding youth-led or youth-run organizations, and if not, whether or not there's an interest in doing so. I didn't know if in your role as our youth representative on the investors group, whether or not you had a response to that question.
From our view, we haven't had a case of that yet, and what we're actually intending on doing is conducting an analysis as to investigating the exact integration of youth-led activities, particularly with regards to funding as well as accountability mechanisms within the GFF framework. So that is something that is actually being instituted as we speak. You know, it hadn't been there yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Patson. Appreciate that.
And
yeah, some
go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, it sounds like Susanna, and then perhaps Angela.
Okay.
No, Angela, please go ahead first. I'll go after you.
Good. Just again to bring everyone back to attention of some key aspects of the GFF architecture. To date, all the money for GFF that has been disbursed to the countries goes to the government. There was no specific guidance to countries as to how much of that could be carved out to fund the civil society organizations, including the youth-led constituencies. And so those are some of the weaknesses of the architecture where the advocacy and accountability task team or CSOs have been working on. To that extent, to try and address some of those issues, we came up with the civil society engagement strategies that has been referenced to a lot by the previous speakers. And in addition to that, in the last IG meeting in Maputo last November, we did present a minimum catalytic budget that we are currently fundraising for. What we are hoping is going to resolve this challenge of at least having some resources where all of you, constituencies of the CSOs at large, could start attracting some resources that are very intentional to doing some quick, low-earning, impact stuff. Is currently what we are trying to negotiate with several funders. So there's no specific money that has gone to our constituencies thus far, such as yourselves. Julian, and we are hoping, that's why we are there, and we want your feedback so that we can be able to represent these voices in terms of what opportunities, what do we lose by not having such kitty in place. And so we are fighting for that, and we hope in the next coming months, maybe 3, 4, 5, then we will be able to unlock at least resources that then with some guidance on how the constituency can start accessing. I just wanted to lay that there so that we are all clear on where we are and how the architecture is designed and how we are hoping to pool our resources for our constituencies.
Thank you, Angela. I think that's helpful. Susanna, did you want to add anything? There was an additional question around. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Angela summarized that perfectly, so I don't have anything further to add.
Great. And I think she might have also touched on another question that we received from someone just for a general update around fundraising to support the CSO's activities. But I know last year we talked about funding that was available for CSO work, and didn't know if Susanna, you or anyone else wanted to provide an update on that particular pot of resources and plans to grow that.
Sorry, can you just repeat that one more time, Lois?
There was someone who was requesting an update on fundraising to support CSO activities in particular, and I think that this person might be referencing an update that we've given on these webinars previously about funding available for CSOs. I think that was about $100,000 that we reported or updated the group on previously, and so I think this person is requesting an update on those funds, how they're being used, whether or not we've been able to increase the budget for funding CSOs directly for engaging with the GFF.
Yes, thanks for that, Lois. Yeah, actually, so at last year's, at the November investors group meeting, there was a commitment made from both the GFF Secretariat for $300,000 and from PMNCH for $500,000. To develop a small grants mechanism. It is under development. It is in process, and as Angela said, there's been efforts underway to try to get other donors to come in and support it, which is part of the what is kind of taking time to try to make sure it meets the needs of various potential donors and partners who may be interested. But we are quite hopeful that it will be moving quickly in the next few months to able to get out the door and to actually send out a call for proposals. We don't have more specific detail on that right now, but please do kind of keep your eyes and ears open to the Google group, because we certainly will use that as a platform for sharing more specific detail about the timeline as soon as we have it. But please do rest assured that there are people working quite hard to make this happen, and we understand the urgency and the need, and we'll be updating you with more information as soon as we have it.
Great. And Susanna, to bring that back to the last question, would youth-led organizations would they qualify to receive that type of funding? And also, how would that be aligned with, as Angela said, with any funding the government would receive that might also be allocated for CSO engagement?
So in answer to the question about youth-led organizations, absolutely, they would be encouraged to apply for funds, and I think we would want to certainly ensure that youth-led organizations were a key component of that small grants mechanism. In terms of alignment, generally the approach at country levels and what the civil society engagement strategy lays out is that civil society organizations should align around a common coalition that is liaising closely with the civil society representative to the multi-stakeholder country platform, which is essentially the country level governing body for the GFF. And that civil society coalition should be developing an action plan that aims to support the GFF investment case in various ways. And so that might be in terms of advocacy and accountability, it may be in technical assistance, it may be in community mobilization. In each country, the sort of relationship of that civil society coalition and the action plan and how that is supported by and works closely with the government, that is sort of determined by each country and how that works, what those relationships are like, and whether those processes are happening with good communication and sort of teamwork together. So we do encourage and hope that there will be alignment between the multi-stakeholder country platform and the GFF investments with the small grants mechanism that would be directed at civil society.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Susanna. With that, I think I will go ahead and express appreciation for everyone who participated in today's webinar. First and foremost, attendees for joining in the conversation and for submitting the questions that you did. As Angela said, we will also plan for a post-IG meeting webinar to offer updates on those discussions. Obviously, we are very grateful to our group of speakers for today's webinar, and thank you all for your time and for your insights and for your leadership and your engagement with the GFF Investors Group. If you do have additional questions or comments that you weren't able to submit today, please do go ahead and email Susanna at the email that is showing on your screen. And we will be sure, obviously, once again, to send around presentations as well as answers to questions that have been submitted for anyone who might not have been able to join this call. So if you'd like to share those with others in your network, please do share these resources with them. And just one final announcement on the timing of the next webinar. Again, that will follow the Investors Group meeting happening on the 23rd of April. The webinar debrief will be on May 8th. So thank you again to everyone for joining today. We wish you well, and take care.